All right, folks, welcome on into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. The sectional football championships are here. Entire season has led up to this, and it's a good thing we got this to talk about, because usually in this segment, talk a little about Syracuse, talk a little about the Bills. Not a very good week to talk about either of those teams, Carl.
Nah, SU can't turn things around. And then even more surprising, how about the Bills coming up short to the Jets?
Like New York Football Jets.
That like, obviously any given Sunday, right? Whatever mantra you want to use for the NFL. But yeah, it was definitely a wild weekend for sure across of I guess all of Western New York sports. So yeah, I'm kind of weirded out by that a little bit, but we got the sectional championships in Section 5 this year, and we know that's not going to disappoint.
Exactly. It has been in some classes, it's been a little unexpected ride to the championship game. In other classes, kind of things went just as we planned. So we're going to get to that in just a few seconds. Later on the show, we're also going to talk about the soccer championships. They're in their state semifinals. The volleyball tournament for girls and boys this weekend will be in the Far West Regionals. The boys, they will be playing tonight, their sectional championship games. So we're not going to talk too much about that, because by the time this is going to be out there, it's going to be over. So unfortunately, we can't predict the future. If we could, my bank account would be a lot more robust. However, we do have the football champions to get to. Those will be going on tomorrow and Saturday, Friday and Saturday. We got 3 games going on a Friday night. We've got 4 games going on throughout the day and into the night on Saturday. And Carl, we'll start with the big boys with Class AA.
Yeah, I don't know. We could have predicted this championship bout between Pittsford and McQuaid. McQuaid 3 seed, Pittsford 4. I wasn't able to catch the UPrep Pittsford game, but we had talked about all season long how if Pittsford gets healthy at the right time, they can make some things shake. Although the way they won wasn't in that fashion. You'll get on that.
No, it was not.
And then McQuaid, they took down Victor, avenged their loss that they suffered in the regular season finale. It was 2 long plays that got it done from John Harding in the backfield, and that's all they really needed. Victor just struggled to move the ball all game long. Thank God I got there at the time I did, because if I had missed the first touchdown, God knows what kind of highlights I would have ran. It would probably been a bunch of 4-yard gains from McQuaid. And man, this is how the game went down. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. SUNY Brockport tomorrow night. I checked the forecast. In terms of the rain in that regard, and might cater a little bit towards McQuaid and what they got going on in their offense. But it's a fun one, and I'm happy that Pittsburgh's going on the run that they have, especially the start to the season that they did. And that's what we got. But you were at that Pittsburgh UPrep game. What went down, my man? Because that don't make no sense.
The long answer to that is, the short answer to that is not a lot. Not a lot went down in that game. That was a 6-0 ball game with Pittsburgh coming out on top, shutting down UPrep, shutting them out. Their dynamic passing attack, their rushing attack. Pittsburgh just really, made UPrep uncomfortable all game long. It never looked like, and UPrep had one drive where I was there for the entire second half. In fact, actually, there was one drive where I believe they advanced into Pittsburgh territory, and that was it. This wasn't even, we've talked a lot about, UPrep this season. This wasn't, them getting down to the red zone, committing a turnover. This wasn't them busting out 3 touchdowns that got called back because of penalty. This was just a dominant Pittsburgh performance. The one thing to note, the big takeaway from this game, other than, the score and the winner, Jackson Green did not play in the second half of this game with some sort of a leg injury, an ankle injury, a leg injury, knee injury. They just didn't play him in the second half. That does tell you one thing, the fact that they didn't even try. He was in street clothes by the time, I got there. So I'm not exactly quite sure, in fact, when exactly in that, that game, that injury happened. But, do you want to risk it for the sectional championship game? And this was something that we talked about a little bit in the studio after in the office after the games. We talked about this before with Class AA. Both teams in this championship game are already in the state tournament. Obviously, you want to win a sectional championship. This would be the first time that Pittsford, as a combined school, has won a sectional championship. Mendon has won some in the 80s, but Pittsford itself has never won a sectional championship game. So obviously you would love to raise that brick. On the other hand, you're already into the state tournament. You're going to be playing next week, no matter what. Do you want to, I don't know the status of Jackson Green. If he's at 85%, do you want to risk him? He's got a lot to do on the basketball court this year. He's already got, a college offer locked and loaded. Do you want to risk him if he's not 100%? I don't know. That'll be a question for them to decide, but certainly an interesting subplot, even more so than when you would have a star player like that dealing with an injury.
Oh, 100%. But as Pittsford showed last week, obviously he's a phenomenal player, probably the best in Section 5. They can still find a way to get things done, and that was encouraging to see.
That's the clear statement. They found a way. That offense, it completely changes when Jackson isn't in that game. Throughout the season, they've had their running back out. They have had, Luke Fliss out. They've had their quarterback out. Jackson Green just changes everything because, Luke Fliss is a very good wide receiver. When Jackson Green isn't on the other side, now he's getting that double coverage attention. That changes things. They can stack the box more. Nathan Rohde, that changes him. And, they didn't have to do much because they were in the lead for this entire time. Their defense was playing well, but that offense looks night and day different when Jackson Green's not in there. So it'll be tough, especially with Will DeMarco back at quarterback. And like we were talking about before, for some reason that offense just clicks, much better when DeMarco is under center for them.
Yeah, and number 80 at quarterback. We've talked about that ad nauseum. I need to figure out why my man's wearing number 80 at quarterback as a sophomore. We're going to figure that out before the season gets wrapped up with. But yeah, him, John Harding, that nice little 1-2 punch on the opposite side of the ball. McQuaid going for their 4th brick in a row. And once again, that game will be played Friday night on Veterans Day. SUNY Brockport, that'll be the nightcap. Should be a fun one.
I believe that'll be myself going out to that game. Going down to the A1 championship game. This game will be at Fairport. Both of these Class A games being played at Fairport. This is the early afternoon session. Fairport High School will be the host of Schroeder versus Hilton in the Class A1 championship game. Schroeder undefeated on the season. Hilton only 1 loss on the season. Their 1 loss to Schroeder in that first one. And before I get too far, we will have if you're listening through this on Spotify, we will be doing our rankings on our website at rochesterfirst.com. We're just not going to talk about them here because it's basically, going to be the teams that are left at the top and everybody else. So there's really too much we need to get into, but you can look at that at rochesterfirst.com. Back to this game. It was Schroeder in that opener, 21-14, went right down to the wire. Schroeder with a late touchdown to do that. And, for Schroeder, it's Drew Pagano back at quarterback for them. He did play last week. Took a little bit of time to get going, but they eventually took care of Churchville Chili, fairly easily. And then for Hilton, of course, the ground and pound attack of Robert Lowry and Jeff Broadnax getting it done all season. This might be, obviously all of these games are very exciting, very interesting. This game might be the one that I'm most looking forward to see how it shapes out this weekend.
Oh, 100%, because styles make fights. I mean, you got 2 literally polar opposite type of offenses going on. I mean, Schroeder, we've called their highlights enough this year. Every time they pull up on the docket, it's like, all right, who's Bacano throwing to now? What are the Washington brothers doing? They're always making something exciting. And then Hilton, on the other hand, the highlights might not be as, fun, I guess you can say, but they get it done and they're putting up points regardless of like how boring or quote unquote whatever you want to call it. I'm excited. First time around, it was only 21-14 with Schroeder getting a last minute touchdown at the end to pull away. But we'll see what style prevails in this fight. Obviously, Schroeder's going to want to get up and down the field on that fast, slick turf. And Hilton, on the other hand, they're trying to make it nasty and make guys playing that little phone booth the entire game. It should be a fun one for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be some history made in this game, no matter what. Schroeder has not won a sectional championship since 2009. Hilton has not won a sectional title since all the way back in 1994. Doing some quick math based on how old I am, that would be 28 years ago. So it's been a long time for the Hilton Cadets. And one thing I want to note from that Schroeder game that I was at, Torrance, Washington, kind of not the impact maker that, you would expect from him, which I think is a good thing. We talk all the time about winning multiple different ways. Torrance Washington is a standout guy that, that Churchville-Chiley put a lot of attention on. That Hilton's going to put a lot of attention on. So for Schroeder to get it done without having to rely on Torrance Washington, he did play in that game. I did double check that. A good sign for Schroeder.
Oh, 100%. Well, that is the game though. I'm excited about. I mean, it's not just him though. Like they have a bunch of weapons that they can throw to. We've said a bunch of names from that Warriors offense. Man, I can't wait because Hilton. The 2 times I've caught them, they didn't. They don't like me apparently. Every time I go, they don't want to make anything fun for me. But then as soon as I leave, I see they got 40 points. So I'm like, all right, clearly this offense can rattle them up quick with the best of them. But 5 p.m. I'm assuming that's going to be me. So hopefully they treat me to a fun one on Friday night.
And then the second half of that game or that Class A doubleheader is East versus Canandaigua. And once again, based on the state tournament, both of these teams in the A1 and A2 championship game, there will not be a crossover game. They will both be going on to the state tournament. If it is both of the 1 seeds, Schroeder and East advancing, it would be Schroeder staying at home because of their sectional points. But back to the A2 championship game, it is East versus Canandaigua. They have met 3 times in the last 4 years in this sectional championship game. Canandaigua has won both of those games. They have won their last 3 sectional titles in a row. However, recent history favors the Eagles. They won in the regular season 26-21. I was at that game for I got there late in the second quarter, stayed there for the entire rest of the game. This was a game that East came out to a 20-0 lead. Canandaigua came storming back, and then that second half was kind of just a grinded out battle of 2 good teams facing off against each other. Canandaigua drove down into the red zone. East forced a big fumble. They turned that into a deep pass and points quickly. That was the difference in the ball game. We've talked all season long. Canandaigua, not quite your older brother's Canandaigua squad. They're not, last year they probably had a margin of victory of something like 40 points. This year, they've had more of those games where they've won by 4 points. Tyshee Crockton, a dynamic threat. They're still waiting for that secondary threat. And, it might just have to be the Tyshee Crockton show in the sectional championship game. Whereas for East, they've got a lot of different guys that can beat you. Zymir Jackson with, as a freshman, I believe, might have the biggest arm in all of Section 5. We've seen it multiple times. You've got Kevin Shepard, you've got Amari Young, you've got Anthony Diaz. So, in the past, Canandaigua's done a good job of shutting down these East skill players that have come through over the years. But this could be a different fight this time around.
Yeah, and Canandaigua, every time I catch them play, they win in different ways. Last week against East Ridge, they got into a quick 13-0 hole, and I'm like, uh-oh. I know I was giving East Ridge all the love in the world last week about the weapons they have, but what happened? But come to find out, Canandaigua fumbled the opening 2 kickoffs. I don't know if I've ever heard of that. Like I've heard of 2 quick turnovers. Maybe you fumble the first kickoff and then you throw it a pick the next time you get the ball, something like that. I don't know. But the first 2 kickoffs, and they still found a way to be composed and come back throughout that game. And obviously their composure showed against East earlier in the season when they made it a fight at the end. You're right. This isn't the same Canandaigua team of the past, but they still find a way to fight. And then East, I know they won earlier in the season, but as you alluded to, this still, Canandaigua took a couple of bricks from East. So that's definitely going to be a motivating factor for them. Those kids been gearing up for this moment on both sides. I don't want to say the styles are too different in terms of how they play offense. Both teams, trying to get the ball to the playmakers on the outside, with East maybe having a little bit more. But don't get it twisted. Canandaigua is not going to bow down to anyone, even if they aren't the same team that they were in the past.
No, and that was very surprising to hear, just because Canandaigua, the last few years, their special teams has maybe been their bread and butter. I believe it was during that spring football season in 2021. They returned something like 7 kickoffs for touchdowns. And that is not an exaggeration. Like, it was ridiculous how much Canandaigua was getting it done on the third phase of the game. So that was certainly surprising to hear, surprising to see. But this is East at top, but still, it's kind of like the Bills and the Chiefs. East took the regular season matchup, but until they knock it off when it matters most, we'll see how it shapes up.
Yeah, that's the same line I think that I had coming into this one. And going into Class B, we're going to have a rematch of earlier in the season with Batavia taking on Monroe. Batavia, I mean, we didn't give them their flowers earlier in the year because they didn't look like maybe the Blue Devils of old. You and I have corrected that as the season going on. This team is for real. Every week that we see them, they're putting up points. They're locking teams down. They beat Monroe earlier in the season, 28-6. We weren't able to go out to that one, but man, they looked impressive, at least from the box score. And Monroe, since then, though, they've been a different ball club. They've putting up a lot of points since then. And I want to highlight their defense. Since they've gave up 16 points in Livonia on October 1st, they haven't given up more than one touchdown a game since then. And they played HFL twice, who, as we both know, is an explosive offense. They're for all the love that we give their offense, I think it's been their defense that's carried them to this point, even when their offense has gone through lulls, like last week against HFL, against Geneva, where they struggled in, I believe, round 1. So this Monroe ball club clearly has tightened things up on that side of the ball. But make no mistake about it, Batavia, they're rolling in their own right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Monroe defense, and they've really stepped up at the right time because, like you said, their offense has kind of gone through some struggles in the last 2 weeks. They only scored 2 touchdowns in each of those last 2 games, to Geneva and to HFL last week. Both of those teams, when they play in the regular season, Monroe much more prolific on offense. Obviously, it's a little bit tougher to get it done in the playoffs, of course. But Monroe, once again, a team that is trying to make some history here. They have not won a sectional title since 1979. Batavia, of course, the defending champs. So, like you said, this has been established as the Batavia bracket. Class B apparently stands for Batavia this year. So can Monroe do it? We shall see.
That game will be Saturday at SUNY Rockport, I believe, 6 p.m. So that's going to be a part of the Saturday slate in here in Section 5. But that definitely is the game on Saturday I'm definitely most looking forward to for sure. And
then we go to Class C. This game, a 3-4 matchup. Both, we talked all season long about how we had these 4 teams battling it out in our Class C rankings and the Class C sectional standings. Turned out to be a 3-4 matchup. Attica at 8-2 on the season, taking on East Rochester Gananda at 9-1. ERG, the defending sectional champs, made it all the way to the state semifinals. However, the only blemish on ERG's season so far this season is to Attica in week 2. We were not at that game, so we're just box score watching here, but it was 40-32. Attica took down East Rochester Gananda. Landon Thomas was dynamite in that game. He had 4 rushing touchdowns for 131 yards. He had a receiving touchdown for 48 yards. So, Attica, Landon Thomas, and I was trying to, do some research, as anybody who's tried to look up stats and such can be a little bit difficult. So, but I got to the Attica Twitter page. They highlight their players of the week, things like that. It's a lot of different guys every single week for them. I read the Democratic Chronicle preview. They talked about Landon Thomas. All right, let's see Landon Thomas this week, Landon Thomas that week, Landon Thomas this week. He's been like their offensive player of the week like 3 times this year. He was also at last week. He had 97 rushing yards, 27 receiving yards, and 38 passing yards. So they're clearly getting a little bit tricky there. But this is an Attica team that is a diverse attack. They only won 3 games last season, so quite a turnaround for them. And then on the other side of the ball, you've got East Rochester Gananda. The powerhouses of last year, of course, carrying it over to this year. Manny Sepulveda, wide receiver, we've talked about him a bunch, just signed to run more jump track and field at the UB Bulls. You've got Miles Cavanis also on the outside. He had a big play in that game. They beat in their sectional semifinal game. They played Leroy. They were down. It was a back and forth game. They won 22-21. Miles Cavanis, a big 4th down conversion, which I did not realize when I said on the air. I kind of wish I did because I would have hyped it up a little bit more. But he had a big play, big run after the catch, got him down to the goal line. They snuck it in. Then it was, C.D. Sneed getting it done on the 2-point conversion. And talk about that, talk about that 2-point conversion. He got stood up at like the 1-yard line. He had to fight for that. So that is just give the ball to your guy and, hope for the best. It's C.D. Sneed, it's Mike Daniels. It's a lot of different guys for ERG. This is going to be both a great game to watch because, these are two good teams. And the other thing, because we haven't really seen Attica this season, so I think Carl's going to be at that game. I think we're both really excited to see what this Attica team's all about.
Oh, 100%. And when you look at their schedule, they've won in so many different styles in terms of their box score. I mean, they just won last week. Mind you, I saw Pena and Dundee earlier this year. They got weapons everywhere. Their quarterback actually, like, for a Class C school, the quarterback is really dynamic, held them to 7 points, so they can win those low-scoring games. Letchworth Warsaw Perry, which we talked about last week, that was a 14-10 game. Now, granted, the way they play offense, it kind of like leads to maybe that being a low-scoring game. But then Attica's putting up some impressive totals. They put up 30 on Haverland, so clearly they have the capability to put up some points. And obviously, we know ERG. I mean, they got guys every other week. I mean, everywhere on their offense. After they lost the running back last year, his name was Chauncey, and he was a shorter guy, but he was
Chauncey Gilbert. Yeah,
Chauncey Gilbert, man, I love watching the little dude play because he was so animated out there. And when they lost him, I was like, man, like, obviously you got Manny Sepulveda on the outside, but who are going to be the others that step up? And clearly, as the season's gone on, they've had guys who've stepped up and even take it to another level. So I've seen ERG, I think, once or twice this year. I believe it was against Mid Lakes, where they pulled away in the second half. And their playmakers were definitely showing out in that ball game for sure. But like you said, I'm just excited to see Attica. I haven't really seen them this year. I know we talked a lot about the Class C schools, and that's just the one school that out of Dundee, I believe Leroy and ERG, that's the one school that we hadn't seen this year.
Yeah, and then, when I was talking about CD sneaking that 2-point conversion, I was almost confusing myself for a little bit because Mike Daniels had one of those runs earlier in the season. Both of those guys, that is a 1-2 punch where honestly, they're both, sometimes you have like the thunder, the lightning. They're both kind of similar in ways, so they both kind of hit you the same way, but they're both, speedy. They're both tough to bring down. Should be one heck of a battlefield in Class C this Saturday.
And then staying at SUNY Brockport on Saturday is going to be the Class D championship game. It's been a collision course since probably preseason. We didn't even have to start to the game to know who was going to be here in this situation. You got OAE taking on Alexander. I mean, guys, if you just want to just be enthused for a couple minutes or so, just go check up the schedules for both teams and just look out how dominant they've been to get to this point. Alexander, who we haven't given a ton of love to because OAE has been doing their things at a substantial level, but Alexander's been doing the same exact thing. They were averaging nearly 40 points a game and only have allowed 9. I don't care what division or classification you're in. That's very, very impressive. It's just unfortunately they're going against a team that's averaging nearly 55 points a game. That's absurd. I don't even have any words to describe what they've got going on over there at OAE. I got to figure it out because clearly they need to, share the love and the secrets with everyone else in Section 5. But both of these teams, OAE particularly gets it done on the ground, averaging 385 yards a game. They got 2 players, I believe, that ran for over 1,000 yards this season. I'm sure Army, Navy, and Air Force are jealous of those numbers right there. They're trying to bring that on to the collegiate level. So go holler at the Aggies over in Oakfield-Alabama, Elba, because clearly they got the sauce on how to run the ball. But no, just looking at the box score and the stats that are provided to us, this is going to be a ball game where obviously we know OAE is really good and Alexander as well. I just want to know how big of a gap, if there is one, between the two teams.
Yeah, OAE, Bodie Hyde and Noah Courier, just 2 playmakers getting it done for them all season long. And you want to talk about Alexander. And once again, this is one of those classes where both of these teams are already in the sectional championship game. So Alexander will get a chance no matter what, depending on how dominant OAE is, to weasel their way through the bracket themselves. But let's just highlight the Alexander defense for a second. So last game in that sectional semifinals, they gave up 13 points to Avon. The week before that, shutout. The week before that, shutout. The week before that, shutout. The week before that, 7 points. The week before that, 7 points. The week before that, we got a shutout. The week before that, guess what, Carl? We got another shutout. And then they gave up 15 to Avon. So Avon is the only team this season that scored more than 7 points on them this season. That's impressive, man. That's impressive.
6 touchdowns in 9 games?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 touchdowns in 9 games of football this season.
I mean, obviously the offense has, been doing their things and whatever, people like us who put stuff on the news, we love the offense. But I'm going to be biased a little bit and say shout out to the Alexander defense, man, because that is all them shutouts. Oh my gosh. Hey, defensive coordinator over there at Alexander, you need to go take all them dudes out to eat lunch, regardless of the result on Saturday, because what those kids have been doing this year, as Stephen A. like to say, is box office. I love to see that, man. Shout out to the Alexander defense.
Exactly. And then finally, we've got the 8-man championship game. Who else? Canisteo-Greenwood, number 1 in the state. They'll be taking on Pembroke this season. These two teams did meet in the regular season. It was a 28-14 victory with Canisteo-Greenwood coming out on top. Pembroke is number 5 in the state. And Carl, I did a little research for this game. We've just been talking about Canisteo-Greenwood. We've been like, 20 seconds at the end of every rankings, just talking about Canisteo-Greenwood. I went to the interwebs and did some research on this Canisteo-Greenwood team. And I figured out why the heck this Canisteo-Greenwood team is so good. Keegan Foote, their running back. I don't have any stats for you, but he's a dude. Like it's, Logan Kiefer was the 8-man guy 2 years ago for Red Jacket. Keegan Foote is that guy as well. I looked on his huddle thing. Granted, you can put any number you want on your huddle. He lists himself as having a 4.39 40-yard dash. So, you can put whatever you want on there, but I watched the tape. I can believe it.
I wasn't running no 4.3 in high school, so that's absurd. All right, shout out to my man, because that you showed me the highlight. The tape don't lie. The tape don't lie.
I watched a couple clips of him. He's got great bursts. Like it is almost, granted there are less people on the field, so it's easy to just kind of run through. I would say it's almost impossible to stop him for like less than a 4-yard gain. His just initial burst is just boom. He's there. He's still linebackers. He's so quick to get to those linebackers. He's got some patience. He can break tackles. If you have, honestly, I might just screen cap some of his huddles and play it through you right now. Copyright be damned. If you just watch some of his clips, you're like, this is a guy that can play football. And this is a guy that it seems like I'm going to be going out there. We'll see how the weekend breaks out, but I'm looking forward to watching Keegan Foote play because I enjoyed watching Keegan Foote's huddle tape. I'll just tell you that. I don't know. I actually don't think that he's a senior. I'll see if I can get that quickly as I, test the wonders of my slow internet. Keegan Foote. No, he is a senior. So let's see if we can find some place to play football because that kid can ball. I'll tell you that.
No, yeah. Something about 8-man ball, especially when you got some ballers out there, it's a sight to see. I remember watching Red Jacket for the first time where you and Thad were telling me about, oh, no, Red Jacket can ball. It's actually kind of fun. And y'all wasn't lying. So Canisteo-Greenwood is obviously cut from that same cloth.
And that game is this Saturday at noon at Pittsford Sutherland High School. So 8-man championship wrapping up as well. So those are our football championship games. We'll have all those highlights for you on RochesterFirst.com on News 8. Should be a great weekend. Gonna bust out the bow ties as we like to do. As for all of the other sports, tennis and swimming, I went to swimming. I went to the swimming sectional championship game. I love going to swimming. I'll just say that. I don't usually get to be there for that long because, we get 3 races, we get 3 winners, we go. I love being at the swimming championship. So shout out to Pittsford once again. Their sectional girls title winning streak can now pop a beer and celebrate. It is 21 years old. So shout out to them. And then quick running through the teams we've got left going on to the Far West Regionals. We'll start with volleyball. In AA, it was Fairport topping Penfield in 4 sets in a battle of the 2 teams that were number 1 and number 2 in the state. So maybe that turns out to be the state championship game in all actuality. I did see we weren't able to be at this game because it was played Friday night as we complained to the schedule makers last week. But Nicole Bell did play for Penfield. She was dealing with an injury, so she did play. How effective she was able to be, I do not know, but she was able to get out there. So at least she went down swinging, no pun intended. They will play Lancaster in the Far West Regionals. Lancaster, the number 5 seed and the number 5 ranked team in the state. In Class A, we've got Irondequoit who beat Mercy in a thriller in the Class A crossover game. They're going to be taking on Sweet Home, who is the number 7th ranked team in the state. Irondequoit is 6th in the last state rankings. In Class B, you've got Wayne, a favorite in that matchup there, number 3, taking on Springville in the Far West Regionals, who is unranked. In Class C, It's the other way around. You got Portville out of the Buffalo region, who took down the mighty Ian Raiders in their crossover game. They're number 1 in the state. They'll be taking on Leroy. And then in Class D, we still don't know who's coming out of Section 5. It'll be Pavilion or HAC. They're going to be playing tonight, and they'll be taking on Chautauqua, number 3 in the Far West Regionals.
Man, I was at some of the crossover, the sectional title games. I believe Class C, Leroy taking on, I believe, ERG, and then Mid Lakes taking on Aquinas. Those are some, especially the latter with Aquinas and who's it? Aquinas and Mid Lakes. I'm sorry,
Mid Lakes, yeah.
Man, thrilling 5-set match. Mid Lakes came back. Aquinas had some heavy hitters on their team. Like we talked about last week. Volleyball this time of year, when the stakes are turned up, the parents are into it, student sections are riled up. They got their own night. They ain't got to worry about football. It's a fun one for sure.
And then in girls soccer, we've got 4 teams left moving on to the state semifinals. These being played in the Cortland area. You've got Spencerport taking on New Hartford. Of course, the Rangers, once again, going back to Cortland. This will be a tough test for them. They are the number 4th ranked team in the state. New Hartford is number 1. New Hartford is unbeaten on the year. They've only got 1 tie on the season. So Spencerport's a team that obviously has won 7 straight sectional titles, but it's been a while since they've gone all the way. I believe they won back-to-back in 2017 and 2018, if my memory suits me correctly. I think one of those might have been a co-championship. So we'll see if Spencerport can keep on moving on. In Class B, you've got Bath Haverling, number 2 in the state, taking on West Hill, number 1 in the state. In Class C, you've got Byron Bergen, number 2 in the state, taking on, we'll see if we get this right, Saquoit Valley, number 3 in the state. And then in Class D, you've got Keshequa taking on Cincinnatus, which is a fun town name that I've never heard before, but I like saying it. So we got 4 girls soccer squads moving on to the Far West, the state semifinals here.
Yeah, you got Mia Gray from Byron Bergen, who every week that we do Section 5 bets, I'm like, man, I want to figure out a way to get her in. Dad won't let me, he's behind me right now. He won't let me put the same person in there more than once, but I'm going to see if I can get her in there again. She's been doing her thing all season long. And obviously Spencerport, I mean, shout out to them making it for the 30th year in a row, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. And then for boys soccer, we've got 4 teams going on as well. Some of these teams could make a lot of noise. You've got in Class AA, McQuaid taking on, once again, pronunciation, Conaquat. They're number 3 in the state. I was able to see that Far West regional matchup over this weekend. McQuaid took down Clarence. It was a game where McQuaid kind of dominated the field of play. Clarence had one really dynamic striker. He was able to break free for 1 goal. But other than that, it was basically just all McQuaid. They won 2-1 in that matchup. In Class A, you've got Spencerport moving on. So it'll be a Ranger 1-2 punch there. They'll be taking on Amityville Memorial. Spencerport number 4 in the state. Amityville Memorial at the top spot. At Avon, the Lee Harkey show, the Braves show, keeps on rolling, undefeated so far this season. They are still number 1 in the state. They'll be taking on Haldane in the semis at number 4. And then in Class D, Fillmore versus Greenport, number 2 for Section 5 Fillmore, and number 3 for Greenport.
I'm just thinking about those Rangers. I know that all these years, the guys have been looking down the hall and seeing the girls having the success that they are enjoying. And I mean, it's human nature to be a little jealous. So shout out to the boy Rangers, stepping to the plate and advancing this far to match what the girls have got going on.
One of my favorite storylines to do, there's a couple easy storylines we gifted every once in a while. It's always fun to do the, maybe the Victor Boys lacrosse program dominant. Girls lacrosse finally goes on. Right? It's one of my favorite stories to see how, competitive, how friendly, the banter is, the rivalry. And no one tells me for sure because, if I talked to this, if we went on, we didn't talk to the Spencerport Boys soccer program, but they might have given us the answer. It's great for them. We love cheering them on. But I'm sure someone in the back of the head is like, man, I just want to. So, good to see them do their thing. But yeah, a lot of teams moving on. A lot of teams potentially going for some state titles this weekend. We're going to have a lot of bricks to give out this weekend. We could have a lot of state championships to give out this weekend as well.
Oh man, I'm ecstatic. I can't wait. To see that emotion on the kids' faces. I remember I was at a class, I think the sectional title game last year, and obviously you don't want to ever look down upon someone who's crying, but just seeing the emotion that these kids have and no matter how hard and how much they put into the game, I mean, it's at its purest form at this level. So I can't wait. I know the kids can't wait, and I hope everyone just leaves the games healthy.
Leaves the game healthy, leaves the game moving on. So we will have all that coverage for you coming up on News 8 on RochesterFirst.com. We'll also have it, on our Twitter feeds, things like that. Thank you once again for listening to the High School Huddle podcast. It is time to break the huddle. We have got, next week, we're going to have to do some thinking here. It's usually the Mary Margaret Johnson show for our West Regionals. We don't got her around. So I know there's some great publications that do good work on Section 6 football. So we might be reaching out to them as well. But we are definitely, no matter what, going to be giving you a great Far West Regional preview next week as we move on to the state tournament. I know some of these teams are going out to Albany, so maybe we'll hit up our boy, my boy Griffin Haas over there in Albany to give us some previews on that, because we got our team's going out in many different ways, and we'll be there every step of the ride. So thank you very much for listening to the High School Huddle. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Feldman. It's time now to break the huddle. We will see you next week. Thank you very much for listening.